Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Community Development and Regulatory Services Committee for today, September 9th. I've been joined by council members Cano, Reich, Fry, and Quincy. Councilmember Warsami is unable to join us today. We have a consent agenda that includes items 10 through 14. I'm going to move to postpone item 14 2 cycles, and with that, move the consent agenda. Are there any questions or items anyone would like to remove from that agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of items numbers 10, 11, 12, 13, and postponing item 14 for 2 cycles signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those items are approved. I'm also going to note on the quasi-judicial hearing agenda, we are going to move to delete item 7 and postpone item 9 for 2 cycles. I just want to verify that with staff. Seeing, I've been notified of this in advance. Seeing no objection to that, I'm going to move to delete item 7 and postpone item 9 for 2 cycles. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those 2 items are concluded. We'll then move to our public hearing agenda, starting with item number 1, Downtown East Block 1 redevelopment sale terms. Mr. Mercer, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Miles Mercer. I'm in the business development group of CPED. I'm the project coordinator and part of the staff team that has worked on this project. Today we're asking you to approve the term sheet with Ryan Companies for the sale of the Downtown East Block 1 development rights and authorize officials to execute a purchase option development contract with Ryan and the Minnesota Sports Facilities Authority and other agreements consistent with that term sheet. But first, let's get oriented geographically. This map shows the Downtown East area. Block 1, and these blocks are part of the Ryan Wells Fargo Downtown East project. Block 1 is here. Across the street to the south is the light block 6, labeled here block 6 is the light rail transit station. Blocks 2 and 3, as you may know, are currently under construction for the Wells Fargo towers. Block 1 is owned by the Minnesota Sports Facilities Authority right now, and it will contain a parking ramp. The ramp will be 6 stories high, hold approximately 1,600 spaces, and also be owned by the Minnesota Sports Facilities Authority. The Sports Facilities Authority retained Ryan Companies through a request for proposals process to design and build the ramp. The configuration of the ramp is such that this is a conceptual site plan. The configuration of the ramp on the block is such that an approximately 18,000 square foot parcel of land will exist on the south side of the ramp. This is the liner parcel. There's also the possibility of building additional structure in the air rights above the 6th floor of the ramp. These air rights and the liner parcel together are the property that we are discussing for development today. So for more background on process and how we've gotten here. In early January, the city issued a request for proposals, selected a developer. The city got 2 responses. In March, the city council designated Ryan Companies as the developer of the Block 1 development rights. And since that time, Ryan, its development partner, Magellan Development Group, and the city have been refining the project, coordinating with the Sports Facilities Authority on the impacts of the development on the ramp, and negotiating the term sheet. I will mention that the Sports Facilities Authority is an important partner to this development project. As the current owner of the block, we need the Facilities Authority to enter into agreements where they will convey the property directly to Ryan. We're going to need their cooperation during construction, and we're going to need their cooperation in determining how the operation of the ramp and the development interrelate. So the MSFA is important to the success of this development. Now, over the past months, the project has evolved. A hotel is no longer in the deal. Ryan and the potential hotel operator were not able to make the project economics work. Another change has been a reduction in the purchase price that Ryan is able to pay for the property. As time has elapsed and Ryan got farther into the cost estimation, they found that they could no longer support the purchase price that it offered in response to the city's RFP, which was $5.6 million. Attached to your materials is a letter from Ryan with more explanation of the factors that led to this reduction. So now that brings us today and the terms of this deal. Attached to your materials is the term sheet. And so here are some key points. Ryan and Magellan plan to build a residential tower of 25 to 35 stories tall within the liner parcel. In the air rights above the ramp, they would build a 7th level of parking for their residents and an 8th level open air amenity deck. Ryan, the city, and the Sports Facilities Authority would enter into a purchase option development contract that would give Ryan until December 31st, 2015 to finalize its project and close on the transfer of the property. Upon execution of this purchase option contract, Ryan would pay to the city a $300,000 non-refundable option price, and we'd expect to get that this fall. When the deal closes, Ryan would pay to the city the balance of the minimum purchase price of $2 million. In addition, Ryan would make additional payments to the city that would total $1 million plus interest once the residential tower reaches 70% leased. These combined payments are in line with an appraisal that found the market value of the property to be $3 million. If Ryan has not closed on the deal by the end of December 2015, it could extend its option period in 1-year increments by paying $60,000 to the city for each year. Ryan would have a total of 7 potential 1-year extensions, which, if they fully exercise them, would take its option period out to the end of December 2022. So why 7 years? Ryan is making and paying for modifications to the ramp that will accommodate a development on the block. These modifications benefit Ryan, but they also benefit the city, since these modifications are likely needed for any type of development to occur. These modifications will cost from $1.3 to $1.6 million. Because of the timing of the design and construction of the ramp, Ryan needs to make and pay for these modifications now over the next few months before it closes on a deal for the residential tower. This puts Ryan at risk. Now, a key reason why Ryan is willing to make this investment, incur this risk, is the increased chance is because of the length of this development period that we would grant them. If the residential project does not close, Ryan can extend its purchase option, and it gives them the chance to develop something else on the site and recoup its investments that it's making into the ramp modifications. I want to emphasize that we have a closing window of opportunity to make the modifications to the ramp given its design and construction schedule. Right now, Ryan is finalizing the design of the ramp. Very soon, they're applying for building permits. Next month, they plan to begin work on the site and ordering materials like steel. All these steps are needed to occur with this timing so that Ryan can meet the deadline of completing the ramp by the end of 2015. This closing a window of opportunity is why it's so important to come to terms on this deal now. Now, the residential tower project offers several benefits to the public, including that it grows the city by bringing tower-scale residential density to downtown in a location that has excellent transit access, right next to a light rail station where the blue and green lines converge. Hundreds of new residents will bring activity and vibrancy to downtown, and a building will line the south face of a parking ramp instead of a blank wall. This project will generate positive fiscal impacts for the city and other levels of government. City staff has projected property taxes of over $27 million to the city, $18 million to Hennepin County, and over $15 million to the Minneapolis School District over 30 years. Staff recommends approval of this item. Representatives of Ryan and Magellan are here with us today. Tony Barranco of Ryan is prepared to make a statement. He or I would be happy to address any questions.
Okay. I have a whole list of questions. I'm sure I'm not the only one. We'll start with you, Mr. Mercer.
Sure.
This is a completely different deal than the deal that was brought to us in response to the RFP. Isn't that correct?
It is different in that it is just a residential-only project, so the hotel has dropped out and the purchase price is reduced, yes.
And the timeline is extended 7 years, and the second $1 million payment is after we take risk of 70% lease. So it was a hotel and housing, now it's not. It was $5.6 million, now it's not.
That's right.
It was going to be built immediately, now it's 7 years, maybe not at all, because there's no penalty if they do nothing after 7 years. We don't get $1 million to get to $3 million until it's 70% lease, which makes us take on risk or essentially become a partner with the developer. And then they pay that over 6 quarters.
That's right.
So it's completely different.
Okay.
No, it's not completely different.
It's different in those respects, yes.
In all of the, so where is it the same? Point out, because anyone could build anything there and we'd still get the benefit of growth. So point out where it is the same.
I would say it's still the same in the amount of density and development intensity that we would get right next to a transit station. I also think it's the same in that we are working with a partner that is in a position that is probably, I think, in the best position to actually realize development there, given the depth of analysis that they've done in the design and planning process because of their intimate knowledge of the ramp design.
Because they're the insider. They know more because they're already working there, so they're the insider. They kind of have an insider deal on this.
What I'd say to that is that we went through a request for proposals process, advertised it to the world. Everybody had a chance to bid on this project, which was to submit a proposal, and this is the one that we felt like that was most responsive to that RFP.
But it's not the same as the RFP.
That is correct.
Not even close. I just want to make sure we're clear that it's not $5.6 million. It's not a hotel and housing. It's not development immediately. And it doesn't even give us the $1 million immediately. And there's no guarantee any development will ever happen.
On the timing, what I would say, Madam Chair, is that Ryan is certainly incentivized to realize a development as soon as they can. They're going to be spending this $1.3, $1.6 million in ramp modifications, as well as pursuit costs. So it's in their interest to realize a development as quickly as they can to be able to get a return on their investment. And so that is, so the project that they're working on with their partners, Magellan, is to realize that residential tower. And that is what everybody hopes will actually occur.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. So Magellan is their partner. If Magellan is their partner and they're ready to go, why don't we have something in front of us that says we're their partner, we're ready to go, we're ready to close in 60 days, we don't need a 7-year extension.
Madam Chair, unfortunately, the timing of the ramp does not fit with the timing of this development. What Ryan and Magellan have done to date is did a set of conceptual plans, schematic plans, that they then took out and engaged and collected pricing information from subcontractors on. Those plans involved both the hotel and the residential tower. It was the results of those plans and that pricing exercises that led them and their partners, including that potential hotel developer, to conclude that they couldn't make the project economics work for a hotel. Since that time, Ryan has not had the opportunity yet to revise their schematic designs for a residential-only tower project. And they've not had the time to go back out into the market to get subcontractor pricing. With approval of this term sheet, they will do that in earnest and be able to better assess and make a final decision about the viability of the tower project.
So why do we need a 7-year extension in 1-year increments? If this is a guarantee that they're going to move forward with this partner, why wouldn't we say, okay, you have 60 days, consummate your deal, move forward, build within a year, and if you don't, the rights revert back to us so we can go out and see if anyone else wants this sweetheart deal. Because at this price, with this timeline, with these components, someone else might be interested.
Madam Chair, what I would say is go back to that. Unfortunately, the time frame of the ramp design and development process is not matching with what I think people would prefer the design and development process of the development to be, in that the design of the ramp is occurring now. The construction of the ramp is occurring now. Ryan needs to make decisions about whether to invest its own money into some of these design and construction costs to modify the ramp, to create the conditions, the situation of the ramp to best position us to realize a development on the site. And Ryan needs to make those investments now, and they do not have a closed deal yet with Magellan. And so therefore Ryan is at risk. And the reason that Ryan is willing to take that risk is because they have this period of development rights where if for whatever reason that Magellan Tower project does not materialize, that Ryan would have a chance to recoup its investment with another sort of development.
So I guess that begs the question, couldn't the city put in the reinforcement at the 1.3 to 1.6 million to preserve our ability to keep the development rights going should the deal fall apart?
Madam Chair, that is a question that we have given a lot of consideration to. It's certainly something we've talked to Ryan about, something that we've discussed and deliberated within the staff level about. I know I've had some conversations with elected officials about. I would say that we didn't come to a consensus position within the staff level, but at this point, the term sheet does not reflect that path of the city putting its own money to make these modifications. And I would say one reason is a concern about would the city actually be able to make back or recoup the money it's putting into the ramp. If we put money into the ramp, now we're at risk.
Well, we're already at risk if we don't accept payment till they lease 70%. If they build something within 7 years over a 6-quarter period, we're already putting ourselves at risk. That was an acceptable risk to the staff team, but putting in the 1.3 to reinforce the ramp to preserve our right to development was not.
Madam Chair, you're right. The $1 million payment is at risk if Ryan does not construct the residential tower for some reason after they've closed on the sale, or they never reach 70% leased. We may not realize those $1 million payments. But I would say that is a risk that's farther out there and that staff felt like more comfortable living with, and that the risk of not actually getting any of these modifications made and putting the development risk on Ryan, since they're the ones that in the best position to, one, gauge what are the actual true costs of these modifications, and two, they're in the best position to bring along their partners, Magellan, and understanding of where the financial capital markets are, that if Ryan is willing to make that investment in the ramp, then they're making a calculus from a private sector perspective on what the feasibility of that tower is. And they're willing to make that investment, so that tells us that they think they can pull it off, but if they don't, then it's their risk.
I guess I would just say to that, I would hope that after $1 billion investment in a stadium and a multi-million-dollar investment in Wells Fargo and a multi-million-dollar park across the street, someone would be willing to pay $2 million or a lot more for the rights to develop something across the street from it, wouldn't you? Isn't that the reason we built rail and a stadium and financed the Wells Fargo deal, was to increase values in that area and realize development? Do we believe in all of that investment?
Madam Chair, we believe in that investment, and we believe that it's spurring interest in the development, and we believe that that investment is the reason why Ryan, Magellan are so interested in this project and are willing to put forward what they have in the term sheet.
So the risk isn't really that big of a risk, since it seems to be a pretty good site once all the other development is around it. So it might not be a bad thing for us to risk either then.
Madam Chair, that would be a policy decision for the city. I mean, one of the questions that the city would have to grapple with is if the city was willing to make an upfront investment, what would be the source of those funds?
Well, Mr. Carpenter's here, and I could call on him to talk about that, but I think the city actually, generally has a good amount of money, and we have a cash flow situation that allows us to keep a good amount of money at any given time. And so in the scheme of things, I don't think $1.3 million to protect our investment in a $4 or $5 million air right would be that big of a trade-off. But I won't call on Mr. Carpenter to opine on that yet. Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Mercer? I'll just note we've been joined by Council President Johnson. Thank you for being here today. It's a public hearing, so if there are no other questions for staff, we'll open the public hearing on item number 1, which is the sale of development rights for the Block 1 minor parcel and air rights plane, approving the term sheet with Ryan Companies and authorizing the purchase option development with Ryan and or an affiliate and the Minnesota Sports Facilities Commission and other agreements consistent with the term sheet. I'll invite Ryan to speak and not give you a time limit since you're the ones on the agenda. Feel free to come forward. Mr. Bronco, welcome.
Committee Chair Goodman, members of the council, thanks for the time today. My name is Tony Bronco. I'm Vice President of Development for Ryan Companies. Joining me today are Pat Ryan, CEO of Ryan Companies, Colin Barr, who's the president of Ryan Companies North Region based in Minneapolis, and Bob Parr, my development colleague who's worked on a number of city projects throughout the last number of years. Also with me is Patrick Brzezinski from Magellan Development. Patrick was the lead construction executive on the execution of the new LPM Tower in Loring Park, which is a gorgeous new building. And David Carlins, president of Magellan, was hoping to be here today to support our team and Patrick, but he is traveling and away, so he expresses his regrets for not being here. First of all, I want to take a moment and thank elected officials as well as city staff for all the hard work to date. It has been a very interesting process on Block 1, and it's been a lot of work to get to this point. Also, it's been incredibly rewarding to see what's the start of the formation of a new neighborhood in downtown East. And seeing the stadium under construction and the downtown East project has been amazing as it starts to take shape before our eyes. An important piece of this development is the Block 1 air rights. Miles took you through a lot of the background on the site. And since we were selected on March 28th, we've been working in earnest on city staff to maximize the development potential for that site, correspondent to what we had brought forward in our RFP. Some characteristics of the site. The site is extremely complex to develop. The site must balance the needs of the owner, which is the MSFA, which has very specific performance requirements for exiting and entering during events. It also has to work in the framework of an existing design-build agreement and parking operating agreement, all while trying to maximize the development potential for the site. Timing is also a unique challenge for the site. The Downtown East development and the stadium are requiring that this parking facility open on time in conjunction for stadium events, which are poised to take place in 2016. And Ryan is arguably the most important stakeholder in the opening of the ramp due to its financial obligations that it's provided to the city to guarantee the bond obligations of the Downtown East development. We also have an office anchor in Wells Fargo that's opening their first building on February 1 of 2016 with the anticipation that 1,610 stalls will be available for them when they open in February. Due to schedule concerns which were voiced early on by the team and by the MSFA, our plan changed in focus along the way from an integral ramp to a 6-story ramp that preserved development opportunities for a future air rights and liner parcel. But because the schedule of the ramp was imminent, we needed to make sure that the design of the base ramp, floors 1 through 6, could be built with or without the development of an air rights and liner project, while at the same time maximizing the future potential. The parking ramp as it exists today is through 100% design development. Construction activities on the parking ramp have already commenced. Major subcontracts for the ramp are scheduled to be awarded this month and next, with material procurement beginning in October. So in addition to the moving pace of the ramp itself, a number of things have evolved since our initial proposal, most notably that we have negotiated a price that is lower than the price that we had initially proposed that was accepted by the City Council on March 28th. I would like to spend a few minutes addressing that for your committee. First of all, what was proposed? Originally, we proposed a few different development scenarios that was led by an optimal scenario of a very aggressive mixed-use project that was really based on a project called the Aqua in Chicago. The Aqua featured a Magellan apartment project integrated with a Radisson Blue, and we attempted to recreate the similar type of project here on Block 1. The project specifically called for 200 apartments, integrated with a 150-room Radisson hotel, a brand new concept that Radisson was rolling out. The expected development costs were going to be in the range of $101 million, and we had requested that 200 stalls be constructed on the parking, on top of the parking ramp, along with an amenity deck to support amenities for the hotel and for the apartments. We proposed an air rights value of $5.6 million. What we are currently proposing, and what's before you today in the term sheet, contemplates a development scenario that was similar to our original proposal in density and massing, but instead of 150 units of hotel, we are focused on a 350-unit residential apartment tower. And although new pricing for the project is not complete, expected development costs for that project will be in the range of $100 million. Similar to our original proposal, In order for this project to be built, we will need the ownership of the ramp to support us in the construction of 200 additional parking stalls on top of the 1610 that are planned for the ramp. We would also need their support for an amenity space that would likely be on top of that 7th floor of the parking deck. As Miles shared, our current proposal for the land price includes $3 million. It also includes Ryan's upfront commitment to invest $1.6 million in the structure that optimizes the future development options for the city and for the site for the long term. Why the air rights prices changed from $5.6 million to $3 million is a very good question. First of all, the assumptions that we made in our initial proposal related to the operating changes we could make to the ramp proved false. In Ryan's original proposal, the April 9th plan said Ryan had made design assumptions that a loading dock could be included within the footprint of the parking ramp. It also asserted that certain structural enhancements could allow for the flexibility of an air rights design and could be incorporated into the ramp. These assumptions caused certain impacts in the operating performance of the parking ramp, and they were not approved by the ramp owners. One design feature of our initial proposal that I wanted to highlight that just shows what effect it had was that we initially had apartment units covering half of the building over the top of the parking ramp. This allowed us to avoid having floors 4 through 8 being single loaded, and as an apartment developer, you like to create efficient buildings that are double loaded so you have a hallway in the middle and units on each side. When we were not able to build a building over the top of the parking structure, and we were forced to move it all into the liner parcel, floors 4 through 8 of our development essentially created 4 floors of space that were less usable because we couldn't build apartments on those floors. I'd be happy to show you pictures if that would be helpful. Ryan's initial concept budget also assumed that it would have the opportunity to take advantage of construction, the entire project at the same time. Those efficiencies would be important for us to hold and maintain the budget that we had assumed in our initial RFP. With the lack of the approval of the initial design changes in the ramp, combined with the requirement to get the 1,610 stall parking ramp open and operational as soon as possible, it was not possible to gain these construction efficiencies of building the tower at the same time of the ramp. This caused an effect on our pricing. Finally, as Miles had mentioned, our initial RFP response included concept pricing based on some preliminary design concepts. The RFP was issued for this site in January, and the final development agreements weren't even completed until February 10th. The concept pricing that we had done early on was based on some assumptions made in the ramp. It was also done without the benefit of subcontractor pricing. After our March 28th council action, Ryan and Magellan began to work on a more complete design estimate, including full subcontractor pricing. Along with some of the changes we had heard in the design, which was not approved by the owner of the ramp, we worked with the Magellan team on a new budget scheme that was delivered on May 15th, and the budget pricing came in significantly higher than what we had originally estimated in our RFP proposal. The May 15th budget, however, did provide a more realistic view of the actual cost of the project, and we invited city staff to take a look at our development budget and our construction budget both before and after the issuance of the RFP. Although our proposal has evolved, there are a tremendous amount of positives about our proposal. This project meets a number of important objectives. Ryan and its development partner Magellan have reiterated our commitment to the council. We've shared a letter with you reiterating our commitment to moving on in design and advancing a 350-unit project that will help the city accomplish a number of goals, including increasing the city's density population and doubling it by 2025. The larger apartment project would add significantly to the property tax base as well as contribute significant fees to the city. This apartment tower will create an estimated 450 construction jobs over a 20-month period, as well as a number of permanent jobs, both in the apartment building and the retail spaces expected to be built within it. A project on the Block 1 site would also support the regional goals of spurring private development in the area surrounding the new stadium. Ryan's commitment to develop the basic green space in downtown East remains unchanged, and I'd like to reiterate to the group that that is already funded for and planned in the overall Development East project budget. Ryan is also committed to providing an even greater leadership role with its involvement on Block 1 on the enhancement of that important downtown east amenity. Perhaps the most important component of the project is that Ryan Companies will agree to take the upfront risk in the $1.6 million of design and construction costs needed now to add additional features and structure to optimize the development possibilities, benefiting the city and the region and the site. We appreciate the time today. We thank staff for their recommendation for approval, and we appreciate your consideration of this proposal. I want to make myself available for any questions that you have, and I do that at this time. I also understand that there may be some additional comments or perhaps even another proposal offered by the Minnesota Vikings for this site. I'd like to reserve the right to share any comments of concerns that we would have if they are indeed offering a counter proposal. With that, I'd offer questions.
Okay. I guess I'll start. I know there are others that have questions as well. I just want to know how can you not describe this as anything other than a bait and switch? I mean, I guess I just don't understand how you guys can't acknowledge we showed you this really fabulous, shiny thing with a lot of money, and you picked us instead of someone else, and now we're not going to do that. We've got a lot of good reasons why. I would agree you have a lot of good reasons why, but why shouldn't someone else, anyone else, be given the opportunity to say what they would do if they didn't have to pay $4.5 million and they had to deal with the issues that you have to deal with?
Committee Chair Goodman, members of the council, I can assure you that the project that we developed and that we had planned for in the RFP was different in design because we did not have the support of the design changes that we had proposed for the ramp. So it was indeed different, and the onus of that could be placed on Ryan, but we had made some incorrect assumptions because the city had negotiated in good faith air rights for this project that their selected developer could leverage the ramp as structure and use the ramp to maximize those benefits. Those assumptions proved false. And because of that, the initial project that we had proposed was different. And for that reason, one of the considerations that the city council will need to do is to determine if it makes better sense for the council to make the investment and to reissue an RFP, or if it should indeed move forward with Ryan. I think as Miles said, there are certain schedule benefits that are inherent with the Ryan proposal, but it's not the only decision before the committee.
And then I guess, as I've said to the good folks at Ryan, I maybe could have gone along with the reduction in price, but my biggest objection is the lack of a guarantee of any development anytime soon. And that 7 years for $60,000 a year, initially not even as an option, but coming off of your $2 million price, is just unconscionable to me. From our point of view, we want to see density. We want to see growth and development. We want to see a large number to help us potentially fund the park going forward, which is an amenity for everybody, and we want to see it done as soon as possible. This project doesn't meet any of those criteria other than density, of which we don't know if anyone else would build something as big, as large, as grand on this block or on multiple blocks. So what I'm really bothered by, and what I've communicated that I'm really bothered by, is that if you have Magellan, you have Magellan. If you don't, you don't. It sounds like you want to say, well, we have them, so pick us, but we don't really have them enough to sign a contract, so we need to have 7 years to determine whether or not we can actually do something. I understand that we even offered you, we'll give you 60 days to see if you can sign them. We'll give you a year after that to see if you can pull something together, and you rejected that and said, no, we have to have 7 years. And I think in the end, that might be your downfall. So I'm wondering why you can't right now say, we'll commit to doing it with Magellan. Within 60 days, we'll let you know. And if they fall through, we'll do it within a year. But if not, move on.
That's right. Committee Chair Goodman, members of the council, very good questions. And, a few things that are staring Ryan front and center. Number one, we have to make a commitment of $1.6 million in the structure of this ramp, absent a proposal that's been priced and designed and reviewed by city staff and through the development process. That is a significant amount of money, and we feel that the length of time that we had negotiated with city staff was commensurate with that upfront risk that we had into the project. The approvals are also dependent upon the MSFA and the Vikings approving the design changes to this ramp, as well as the addition of 200 stalls for the ramp. Our project cannot move forward without 200 additional stalls of parking on top of the ramp. It cannot. And the team and the MSFA have the sole authority to be able to approve or deny those rights. And so if we had a very short window of time for those rights, what would the ownership of that do but wait and see what would happen with the overall development process? So for us, a key moment was both the significant amount of the upfront commitment and the fact that we couldn't be waited out for a short period of time prior to making decisions on the air rights development.
Okay, but you've been doing this since the 28th of March, and we're in September, so it's not like you haven't had 6 months to try to figure that all out, and it's still not figured out. And you still don't have construction pricing, and you still haven't signed Magellan on the dotted line, but you're telling us, don't worry, we're going to do it, but it might take 1 year, it might take 7 years, right? So you can't commit to doing it within a shorter time frame than 7 years. Is that correct?
Committee Chair Goodman, we haven't had the benefit of knowing what our deal is to know how to price it and to design it. And absent approval on the design of the ramp, the understanding of the schedule, and the understanding of what we are buying, you're asking us to put forward a process that is waiting for its key components to begin.
Councilmember Reich, followed by Councilmember Frye.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And sometimes complex situations do boil down to very simple things, and it's clear, to echo Councilmember Goodman's point or the Chair's point, you had a fantastic proposal, and it won the day. And if I hear you correctly, that some assumptions that were in our RFP were insufficient to support the assumptions that led to that proposal, and then with new understandings and facts on the ground that now suggest otherwise, that you would not be able to deliver on that feasibly, that perhaps the fault is, to some degree, an RFP on our end that wasn't instructive enough and clear enough so people could have proposals that would be very, very close to what was evaluated, particularly when it was a competitive RFP. Because, what we have before us is what gets you over the finish line, and someone else is on the other side, not, in a position to develop. So, I really see a deficiency in our process to a certain degree. Ryan is a legacy partner in the development of this city. There is no doubt about that. So I would first point fingers at us and our process before I'd look to them and criticize them.
So, Mr. Mercer, perhaps you can answer that question with regard to the deficiencies in our process that you've been the leader on. Is that true? Were there deficiencies in our process that led us to this point?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Reich, I guess I would look for more clarification on what deficiencies.
Information that would have led to a conclusion for what actually could be built there. Clearly, they had information in the RFP and information within what the situation and conditions be that they would have to play by, the rules that they have to play by to deliver on an end product. And clearly now they've come to different conclusions, and so it's either the information that went in or those who processed the information at the get-go. And I'm now taking a self-reflective look on behalf of the city to look at our information going forward that they responded to. And this is not a blame game thing. This is just, we all knew what we knew and we did. We formatted information. People responded to that, and now we have the situation today.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Reich, I guess what I would say is that we did the best that we could, that we were, if you go back in that history, you may remember that we were in the throes of trying to finalize the broader Downtown East deal and finalize the final agreements for that. And so we were definitely in a fog of trying to get everything, the information grounded as best as we could. And we thought that we did when we released the RFP, but I think your point is fair that as the process has unfolded, as we were able to get deeper, and as Ryan was able to get deeper into assumptions about how the ramp could be modified or not, that sure, it would have been helpful to be able to outline all that up front more clearly.
So, Mr. Mercer, don't you think it would be fair to say, I feel like there's an elephant sitting in the room and no one is saying it out loud, so I'm going to.
Sure.
Don't you think it's fair to say that when we did the RFP, we assumed the Sports Facilities Commission and the state would allow us to put 2 levels of parking in to support development? And isn't it true that now the rug has been pulled out from under that? Ryan doesn't want to say that out loud. They don't want to piss anyone off. No one wants to piss anyone off. But that is the reality. The reality is we said we want development, we want growth, we want density, and we want those apartments there to feed into the ramp that our taxpayers are helping to build that needs to be full to pay off our bonds. Correct? I know it's a little complicated for some people, but it seems like a pretty simple issue to me. We said we want development there to fill the ramp that we're relying on to pay off the bonds that we've issued at taxpayers' expense. And now the state and the Sports Facilities Commission has said, nope, can't do that. Now you have to build even more parking next to a transit stop, which has made it more difficult for Ryan to be able to support that price. That's different than the 7 years, you guys. I'm not letting you off the hook completely, but that's the price differential issue. And no, you don't want to say it out loud, and you forced me to, so you got your way.
Madam Chair, what I would say is when we released the RFP, we couldn't predict what type of development we might have gotten responses on. It could, could it be office? Could it be a hotel? Could it be residential? I would say that a residential project is the one that's most likely going to need its own dedicated parking, because for someone to rent an apartment, especially in a tower like this, they're going to want to know that they have a place to park. If it was an office development or a hotel development, perhaps those are in less of a need of dedicated parking. And so, case in point, Wells Fargo, the next 2 blocks over, there's really minimus parking in the basement of those towers, and they're expecting their employees to find parking just like every other downtown parker does in the market. And there happens to be a big ramp next to it that we hope that they all park in. So if someone had come forward with an office development proposal, we would have liked them to engage in the same, or follow the same approach. And because you're absolutely right, it is in our incentive to see that ramp fully utilized, because it is key to the financing structure that we did, issued the bonds for the public elements of this project.
Thank you. Councilmember Frye.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an extremely important project to me. I care deeply about the success and vitality of downtown, and the success and vitality of downtown is dependent on how Downtown East does. And Downtown East this parking ramp, for all intents and purposes, is front and center. If Mr. Bronco, if you want to come back up real quick, I've got a few questions for you. We talked about a series of assumptions that went into the RFP process. And, said some of those assumptions have changed. Some of them have remained the same. And then we talked about the differences between the 5.6 and the 3 million and what led to that shortfall. The first you mentioned was the loading dock, and I agree with you. I worked intensely with you on that process. The second was the construction costs, and clearly the market is a little bit more boisterous right now, so cranes are more expensive. I'm assuming wood and steel are more expensive than they previously were, so that would account for some offset. But and Councilmember Goodman touched a little bit on this, but are we not right that this is predominantly about parking? The shortfall and the failure of the hotel to go forward, and the requirement of an additional 200 spots is, we're talking about parking here, and the insistence that you guys build an additional 200 spots as opposed to rely on the 1,600 spots that are already there.
Committee Chair Goodman, Councilmember Frye, parking has been arguably the paramount issue that we've been dealing with respect to the project. And Councilmember Reich had started going down the path of what assumptions were made wrong. We had perhaps, if there was the biggest mistake I think Ryan made was when the city had completed the negotiation of the air rights, we had understood the air rights to be something different, I think, than the owners of the base ramp did. And that's the onus of some of that is definitely on Ryan Companies. We thought that we could take advantage, just logic will tell you that if you're building a large development on top of a parking ramp, it would seem to be a logical source of parking spaces for the project. We also have the contractual requirement based on the fact that Ryan is the operator of the ramp and is guaranteeing the city bonds. We have to use commercially reasonable means to maximize the net operating income of that ramp. And so we had hoped that additional development on that site would benefit Ryan and inherently benefit the city because of the strengthening cash flow of the parking ramp. So that started to be an issue. And again, we didn't do a good enough job forecasting with our partners the operating concerns, especially the game day concerns of the MSA and Vikings. And the onus of that is on us. Sure. And that evolved into the need to add 200 stalls to it. And that conversation has continued to morph as we've gone. And to date, we don't yet have an approval from the MSFA and the Vikings to add any more stalls.
So I just want to repeat that. As to date right now, you don't have an approval from either the MSFA or the Vikings to add 200 stalls that would serve the residential, right?
Not at this time.
And I'm assuming it would have been one of your assumptions that you probably need a few hotel spaces for the hotel that was previously proposed as well, right?
You know, we've vacillated on whether or not there was enough general parking in the area to service the hotel. And I think at the end of the day, we were comfortable that the overall market supply could support it, and we'd figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the impression that, you know, if you have a hotel there, I mean, we've got 1,600 spaces. That's not including the 200 spaces that you're proposing adding. We have 1,600 spaces there that are supposed to serve the stadium and any associated events. That's enough parking that I think we can share some of it, especially if it's a hotel. And the people that are going to the hotel, chances are probably also going to the stadium. It's the same exact people. So I'm a little bit frustrated with that. And, you know, what we have right now is the situation where the shortfall of a project is due to a refusal to allow parking. And then the people who are refusing to allow the parking are now proposing a new project. It seems, I don't know, it's a little bit frustrating to me. It's a little bit fishy.
But Councilmember Frye, just to be clear, it's the Sports Facilities Commission and the state refusing to provide the parking, not the Vikings themselves.
Who
You could
exactly
ask
has
Mr. Bagley that, but.
Yeah, I will. I will reserve a bunch of questions for Mr. Bagley as well. So that touches on that. The second piece is the amenities deck. I know that the Vikings certainly want to have an amenities deck. It's something that I'm not at all opposed to, given that it would take people out from the park itself and put them on top of the roof. You're presently planning on using about 2/3 of that space. Is that correct?
Yes, it's not fully designed, but that's about right, Councilmember Frye, yes.
Okay. And the remaining 1/3 is simply just the top of the parking deck, right?
Correct.
Okay. In the future, I mean, is there any sort of plan to sell that space off if, in fact, the Vikings wanted to put their own amenities deck on top there?
Committee Chair Goodman, Councilmember Frye, related to that question, we were asked the question by the team a few weeks ago to look at the design of an amenity deck on top of the parking ramp to benefit the stadium experience and provide some additional tailgating and other things. It actually provided some benefit for the project, and it would have covered the top floor of the parking deck, which is a benefit. It also would, I think, be a pretty cool game day experience. I think that is there. Our project does not intend to use the entirety of the amenity deck, and so that is available for discussion. But in our pro formas for the project, we had not anticipating monetizing any additional air rights beyond the amenity deck, which is about on half of the ramp site, and the liner parcel. Some complications that they may have is just due to the where we're at in the design and development process of the existing ramp, we would have to put the design on pause to start designing a full floor amenity deck. That would involve structural enhancements. It would involve some egress developments that are not currently planned in the ramp, and that would have a design and delay impact on the ramp.
And because it has a delay on the design impact of the ramp, then we would be moving into the following year, and we would be losing approximately $250,000 per month in parking revenues that are going to pay off the bonds for the yard, right?
We certainly would have concerns about any delays of the ramp due to the fact that Ryan has got to make guaranteed payments to the city starting January 1 of 17. And we're counting on the revenue January 1 of 16 throughout the year to make those payments. And absent an operating ramp January 1 of 16, it is true we won't have the benefit of that cash flow.
Finally, just one more question, and that's there's a few items that weren't expressly listed in the newest agreement that we have with Ryan. And I, by the way, I share Councilmember Goodman's sentiment and the frustration of the alteration of the plan, and two, the 7 years to actually develop. But there's also items of a $200,000 that will go to pay for a fundraiser, specifically for the green space in front of the stadium and the Wells Fargo development. The second is a commitment to fundraise, and then the third, which I know is also not expressly in there, is a commitment to put in a police substation at the base floor of and the retail of the Wells Fargo development. Is just to make sure that's correct.
Correct. A couple comments on each of those, Councilmember Frye. We have talked about the importance of the green space in downtown East. As Councilmember Reich had said, Ryan and the city have had a legacy relationship for a long time, and we feel the weight of that legacy relationship with every action that we do with the city. This arguably is the most. And so as part of the Block 1 program, we were going to step up into an amplified role and show additional commitment of how we can support the fundraising effort of what this green space can be. We also would be happy to continue our conversation about planning a police substation on or near the site. We do have the element and the issue of timing and what can be supported by our project partners on Block 1 that would have to weigh into that conversation. But we are at the table to explore that with city staff, and I know that that's a priority for you.
Yeah. I think chances are we're going to have to engage in that discussion as well. I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Mr. Bronco.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bronco. Any other questions for staff or the folks at Ryan? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 1. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record. There is a sign-in sheet. Some is on this item, some is on item 5 as well. Mr. Bagley, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is Lester Bagley. I'm Executive Vice President of Public Affairs and Stadium Development for the Minnesota Vikings. I reside at 1820 Irving Avenue South in Minneapolis. I come before the Community Development Committee today to request that the City of Minneapolis initiate a new RFP process in order to protect and enhance the stadium project as well as the green space that's being expected and hopefully planned and developed in front of the new stadium, but also to allow the city to maximize the value of the development rights for this project. Ryan Companies should be congratulated for stepping up and delivering a corporate user and an exciting mixed-use development as part of the Wells Fargo project. They will also help deliver what promises to be a game-changing new green space at the Commons. This new Commons will be used by the neighbors and residents and everyone in our city, but also will be used as a gathering space for Viking fans on game day. We're very excited and very supportive of this Wells Fargo project as well as the new city green space that it contemplates. However, we are concerned with the current status of the proposal that is before you today. It could impact the McClellan parking ramp and provide future development rights to the developer for the parcel known as a liner parcel. We're concerned with the uncertain impacts on the stadium and the city green space and the front doorstep of both. And we are concerned that the proposal before you today is not a market value proposal for the city. Today we have distributed a letter and an outline to the members of the committee to provide further detail on our concerns and an alternative proposal for the city that is far superior to the one before the committee today. The Vikings team of ESG Architects, Mortensen Construction, and Garden Communities has looked hard at this situation and potential opportunity. The letter and proposal and comparison chart that are before you, we've laid out a side-by-side comparison. There are 3 key items on which the Vikings organization is prepared to move forward immediately. 1, we are prepared to pay the city $4.6 million for the development rights up front to be used by the city toward the cost of building the Commons. 2, we will build an additional supports to the ramp to support our development on the liner parcel. This is estimated cost to be $1.3 to $1.6 million. And 3, we're prepared to pursue development of the liner parcel now with an approximately 16 to 18 story mix of residential, retail, and media. We would commit to move forward on the design now in an effort to get the project completed by July of 2016. We're also excited about the opportunity to incorporate the development of the liner parcel into a master development of additional parcels near the ramp, which are owned by affiliates of the Vikings. We strongly believe that the liner parcel should be part of a broader, comprehensive urban plan. So we believe that we have an exciting vision for this part of the city, and we present a fair and far superior business deal for the city. We would appreciate the opportunity to work with the city on this project. We would like to show the city that we are good business partners and that we share your long-term vision of a vibrant and smartly planned urban landscape in this part of the city. Again, we respectfully request the city initiate a new RFP process and allow any and all proposals to come forward to be reviewed and analyzed. Thank you for your consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Councilmember Frye has indicated he had some questions for you. I don't know if anyone else does, but we'll allow Councilmember Frye to go first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Bailey, I have a series of questions. First, I just want to address why we're in this position to begin with. And as I stated earlier, a large part of it is due to parking, either the ability to build 200 additional stalls and or the ability to have those stalls used specifically on game day. And just to be very clear, am I right that you are still, you and or the MSFA, or they're still declining to allow for 200 additional spots?
Well, thank you, Member Fry. A couple of points. First of all, Ryan was intimately involved in the parking agreements, and they knew very well what the terms were included. We did have Parsons Brinkerhoff, PB Sports is their sports traffic management. They're one of the nation's top experts on getting fans in and out of parking, in and out of stadiums. And they've advised that the 200 stalls would have a significant impact on the egress of fans from the game after the game. They all arrive at different times, but after the game, they all essentially leave around the same time. Again, we will build the stalls. We will live with the restrictions, and we're prepared to build them now.
Okay, so just to be clear, though, you're prepared to build the stalls, and the stalls are okay if you build them, but are they not okay if Ryan builds them?
We're prepared to build the liner parcel. We're prepared to go forward with that now. We do have, as we've discussed, and we can provide more detail, potential as part of a broader development potential to build parking at the property next door across the street on property owned by the Vikings organization.
Several questions about that. First, you mentioned PB Sports, and that was the consultant that you mentioned that said that it would be difficult for ingress and egress during game days. First point, Vikings hired PB Sports, right? That's someone you hired to be your own consultant?
That's correct, but they're a national, they work for cities, they work for counties,
but they are paid for by the Vikings, right?
Correct.
Okay, and we're really just talking about ingress and egress on game days. There's 200 spots there. Of those 200 spots, that's 200 spots serving 350 residences. I mean, I think it would be a fair assumption to make that the vast majority of those 200 spots, people wouldn't be leaving, anyway on a game day because it would be so crowded. Of those 200 spots, the number of people that would actually be leaving during the second half of the game, I would be blown away if it was more than like 10. If you count the numbers on that, we're talking about 38 seconds that would be added to the egress on game days. The fact that, we wouldn't agree to an additional 38 seconds to allow additional density, tax revenue generation for the city and eyes on the park, that kills me.
Well, again, we'll have to rely on PB Sports. They're a world-renowned expert.
I don't want to rely on somebody that's paid for by the Vikings. That just doesn't make any sense to the city. I agree that your proposal looks great on paper, but I'm not gonna. But the reason that we're even looking at this proposal in the first place is because of that 38 seconds. And maybe I'll just take 38 seconds of my time, just be silent for us to really realize how minimal that is and what the impact would be on the leaving the stadium. So in the second point, you mentioned the deck. You mentioned if we're to put the deck on the Wilf parcel, I'll call it. That's the parcel just north of the stadium. My concern about putting a deck there is that would, by its very nature, detract from the amount of revenues that the city could collect from the parking lot. What would you propose from the parking deck on Block 1? So let me clarify to make it a little clearer. We've got the Block 1 parking deck. That deck is used to pay off the bonds that go for the park. Now we've got another parking lot just next door on the Wilf's parcel. And this is not a rhetorical question, I'm being serious. How can we ensure that the parking of the Wilf parcel is not going to detract from the parking that would go to pay off the city bonds?
Councilmember Fry, a couple points. First, it's not just Viking games that would be impacted. There's going to be multiple events at the stadium. The Sports Facilities Authority and the Vikings just retained SMG, who are one of the best building operators in the world, and they're very excited about our community, our city, our stadium, and our opportunity to bring events, significant events that have significant attendance. So this is a bigger issue than just the Viking organization and just for our parking. But in terms of the property next door, we've got some concepts, and we've talked with you and other members of the committee about concepts, but we don't have design, we don't have plans, but we certainly would work with you, would work with the city to develop parking, to develop residential, develop a hotel, develop that mixed use with your involvement, collaboration, and certainly with your approval.
Okay. So the plan to ensure that the Wilf parcel doesn't detract from the Block 1 revenues is a plan that would be created at some point in the future, collaboration between us and you. Just want to be clear, that's what we're saying.
Yeah, I think that's what we're saying.
Okay, the next question I have is just about the deal itself. You mentioned the $4.6 million, and on paper, $4.6 million is more than $3 million, no matter which way you look at it. So I will concede that point. But, as we saw with the Ryan deal, it started out at 5.6, and now we're looking at 3 with conditions. How do we know that yours isn't going to drop dramatically as well?
Yeah, Councilmember Fry. I mean, we're committed to put this money up front. We'll put it into escrow, and we'll work to advance the proposal.
If we were to forward this item today without recommendation to the full council, we come back to you. You're going to put the money in escrow, $4.6 million prior to the full council vote next Friday.
Yeah, we can work with you on that. Yes.
Okay, and would that $4.6 million be placed in escrow without any conditions?
Well, subject to agreements and agreement between the city and the development team.
If you put $4.6 million subject to entering an agreement down the line, there's a really good chance that we're not going to enter into an agreement. There's a good chance that you're not going to be willing, or we're not going to be willing. So what I would want to have is this term sheet right up front, so it's clear for everyone, what is and is not allowed. And a letter, as we found out as well, a letter of intent or a memorandum of understanding, for the most part, from the legal perspective, has no teeth. We need a term sheet right up front, so it is clear as day that you're in for the long haul. Your $4.6 million is there, and it's not going anywhere.
Understood, Councilmember Fry. We agree. That's why we are supportive of an RFP process to bring any and all proposals forward, and we would be transparent on that term sheet. Now, look, we're motivated to make sure this project happens, that this exciting vision, this doorstep to our new stadium and this new opportunity for our city gets done. And we're motivated to do this. We're ready to step up, and we're ready to sit down and iron out those details in a transparent way that you're talking about.
Okay, so the next piece is just based on the price tag. $4.6 million, as I mentioned, is more than $3 million. But we also have to consider the impact of property taxes and the revenue generated from that mechanism as well. The Ryan project proposes 350 units. I believe that yours proposes 250 units. That's 100 units less. I believe that we have an estimate that says that each unit generates about $4,000 worth of property taxes per year. You multiply 4,000 times 100, that's 400,000. Multiplied out over a period of 10 years, we're looking at 4 million. So all of a sudden, 3 million is looking more like 7 million, which is more than yours, your office. Is there a reason why you're not going to do the 350 units as opposed to the 250?
Councilmember Fry, a couple points. One, we are committing to a 16 to 18 story development today. We will step up. We'll put $4.6 million into escrow. We are committed to go today. The proposals before you today is an option to build over several years. It's hard to compare the two when one is a commitment, put cash in and build today. The second point about the size or the height of the structure, the 16 to 18 stories, and just talking with our architectural experts, and they're advising us that's more in context and scale with the Wells Fargo development, with the stadium, and so that would be our vision. Again, this site is the front door of our stadium and the park, and we're very concerned that this gets done in the proper way.
So I guess my question is, why not an additional 100 units?
Well, I think what we've talked with our residential folks, with our developers, with our architect, with our designer, with our financial team, I think what we believe is appropriate for this parcel is 16 to 18 stories on this site. And again, ours is, we are committing today. We're committing as soon as we can sit down and iron out that term sheet to build that today.
When you say appropriate, what does that mean? Why would 350 units not be appropriate, but 250 units be appropriate?
And I'd rather leave that to the development experts, and we'll be happy to bring Mr. Becker in and address that and answer that question more directly and more exactly.
Let me just say
than
what
I
my
could probably
sneaking suspicion is. If you build 350 units, then that building would slightly that building would be slightly taller than the Viking Stadium, and I'm sure you would want to have the Viking Stadium as the preeminent force in downtown East. Let me know if you disagree with me on that, but that is certainly why. And there's nothing wrong with that. Vikings are self-interested. There's a lot of businesses out there that are self-interested, and you've got reason to want your building to be bigger than everybody else's. Would you disagree with that?
No, I think I answered the question, when you asked me the first time. And, there's also potential, security issues, on that site with a tower that size. But, I think bottom line is that it's architectural experts. We're relying on the experts to advise us what makes the most sense in scale and in context with the surrounding development, and that's where we've come down.
Okay, a couple more questions. I realize we're on a time crunch here. Just to be clear, the reimbursement of the $1.6 million for the reinforcement of the ramp, you're paying that. That would also go in the escrow prior to the council vote?
Yes, that would be up front.
Okay. What about deeper involvement in the yard? If you're given $4.6 million, you're asking that be directly invested into the yard? Are you asking for design? You can give design feedback, or you have input on what the yard looks like?
Again, Councilmember Fry, we share your passion for a great green space, and we want this to be an outstanding space for our fans, but also for everybody in Minneapolis and neighborhoods and community to use. So we share your vision on the green space, on the commons. We're already in part of the park use agreement negotiations with the city. As you know, we have agreed to invest $1 million in the park. We're the only entity thus far that has invested in the park, and we have forwarded half of that payment. We're into $500,000 with another $500,000 due here shortly. So we are in for $1 million. We would love to see all or as much of the development rights proceeds go directly into the park.
Mm-hmm. Can you just describe quickly what your commitment would be to develop raising funds for the green space?
Well, again, I think we'd work with you and city leaders on making sure that we bring that space to its potential. I serve on the park committee appointed by former Mayor Ryback, and as do you, and we've been working on design RFP and providing input, and we're excited about the opportunity. We will continue to be a partner, and we're willing to talk further about the fundraising with you, but right now, as I said, we're in for $1 million on the park, and we're the only ones that are thus far.
No further questions. Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question? I just have one for Mr. Bagley. I'm a little bit confused about the parking situation, and maybe Ms. Siegel will have to clarify, and I apologize greatly for asking you to be here and now calling on you. I understand that it was Jim Showalter and the state that said that parking can't be built on this site because of the way the bonds were issued. I'm happy to blame the Vikings for just about anything, but I just want to be clear that they might not like it that parking would be built there, but it's not that they can prevent it. It's that the state is saying the way the bonds have been issued in this project make it difficult to locate a private ramp here. Isn't that correct? I'm sorry, but I just want to make sure I understand this.
Madam Chair, my understanding communicated to me through the Minnesota Sports Facilities Authority was that there were some legal issues with the state bonds with allowing designated parking for residential development on top within the 1,600 stalls. I can't give you specifics on exactly how detailed that opinion was. It was not shared with us. All I've got is this secondhand conveyance through the MSFA.
Okay, so it's not something Mr. Mercer knew in advance. It's not something Mr. Lutz knew in advance. It's also not something the Vikings have caused unless they're lobbying behind the scenes at the state to cause this problem. This is a new thing that we can't maximize the parking for residents on the spot on a ramp we own, correct?
I can answer on behalf of the city that the city was not aware of this.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, this is a public hearing on item number 1. Is there anyone else here to testify? Anyone? Mr. Ryan.
Councilmember Goodman, I won't take much of your time. I just would like to clarify a few things and cause all of us to look at really what has been created in downtown East and keep that long-term impact to this great city in perspective. And so in the heat of these decisions, we have to step out and say what's best for the city. That yard was really a creation of a number of people, and we were fortunate to be in a position to create it and execute on it and ultimately attract what will be 6,000 to 8,000 new employees in that area. And as part of that, we are creating a great park for the residents of the city and for the people that are going to be coming to the Vikings games 12 times a year and for other events. Our proposal was in the best interest. The one that is before you today, we think has the greatest probability of being executed. We have been through this process from February until today, and we have a lot of knowledge. And although you don't often call me nice, Councilmember Goodman, we weren't just being nice to the Vikings or the MSFA or to the state. The reality is their parking lot performance is sacrosanct to them on game day. I don't agree with it. I think many people in the industry don't agree with it as being overprotective, but that is their vote. And they do have a vote along with the MSFA. And so nobody is working in silos here. We also have a contractual obligation to the MSFA to complete this ramp. To date, we're the only ones that have invested money in the ramp to the tune of $1.3 to $1.6 million. And we've done that on the good faith that we're going to be able to work through this. You may not like the 7 years. We don't like the diminution in cost that we're talking about, but because of operational issues and assumptions that were incorrectly made at the beginning, this is where we are. I think we have a relationship with this city that goes back for decades. And we have never gotten to this point in a project where we haven't ultimately executed. Now, I can't stand here today and guarantee that we're going to get our deal done with Magellan, but I can tell you that there's nobody that is going to work harder or better or faster and in the best interests of the city than we will to get this executed. Hopefully, if you leave here with nothing else, you will leave here with that belief that our interests are best served. Wells Fargo's interests are best served, and the city's interests are best served by moving on this proposal. If you want to tweak it, fine, but I'm not going to sit here and propose something to you that we don't have confidence that we can execute, because that's a game that nobody should play. And we're not going to stand here and play that game. So it's a tough decision. I appreciate that. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here to testify on item number 1? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and move this forward without recommendation. What that means is there are 9 more days to determine what we do, if anything, or we postpone it on the council floor or the committee of the whole floor if we haven't gotten to where we want to be. I agree with what's been said. What we have in front of us is a proposal for an option to build. That's been my issue. I've said it a bunch of times. It's not an option to build. We don't want an option to build. We want to guarantee you're going to build. We don't want to wait over 7 years. I don't think $60,000 a year is anywhere near what should be paid. I don't like taking risk on the 70% lease. I could maybe live with the lower price. I think you've made a legitimate case as to what the problem is, and I think Councilmember Reich did a good job of explaining what the shared responsibility was for how we got to that point. But I want to think about this in some ways from the perspective of having one of the applicants is applicant A and one of the applicants is applicant B, and take the names out of it. I do think that there is some of this, well, we don't like or trust the Vikings because we're the city going on. And there's a lot of this, we love Ryan, they've done so many great projects for us going on. And I think that taints people's point of view. And I'd like us to think about these things as completely independent of who the group is who's offering them. All of us, those of us that didn't support the Vikings deal, but did support the Ryan deal, and those who supported both. This is a new group of people on the council. You'll have your own opportunity if you're new to the council to determine who you think makes the best deal for the public and the taxpayers of the city of Minneapolis. There has been a lot to think about here today, and we'll have some time to be able to think about it at a minimum 9 days, which does not delay anything because we're in the current cycle. So if there are no objections to my motion to move forward without recommendation, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. Thank you for being here today. We'll then move on to item number 2. I'll give the public a chance to clear the room unless you are excited about being here for the good folks at Chef Shack Ranch who are here for their license. Permanent expansion of license. Okay, on item number 2, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Chef Shack at 3025 East Franklin seeks to have their on-sale wine and strong beer license expanded to include an outdoor patio on private property. They will plan to operate that between the hours of 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. Thursday through Sunday. We did a mailing of the public hearing notice within 300 feet of this establishment, and we notified the neighborhood association and the business association. We received no responses from that mailing. They meet all of the requirements. Staff is recommending to approve this expansion of premises.
Are there any questions for Mr. Wilson on item number 2? Seeing none, this is a public hearing on item number 2 for a permanent expansion of premises for Chef Shack Ranch. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Are Lisa and Carrie here? No. Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and move approval. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. On to number 3, Life Cafe. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. LTF Club Operations, Inc., which is Lifetime Fitness, is seeking a brand new liquor license in the Target Center for the Life Cafe. This facility will operate within the Lifetime Fitness Center, and it will be open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Lifetime Fitness is the 100% owner of this and licensee of this application. A public hearing is required. We did notify all persons, property owners, and business landowners within 300 feet, and we sent 44 notices out. We notified the DID, the Minneapolis Neighborhood Association, and the Downtown Improvement District. We received no responses, and staff's recommendation is to approve this new liquor license.
Questions for Mr. Wilson on item number 3, Life Cafe, new business? Seeing none, this is a public hearing on item number 3, considering an application for on-sale liquor and Sunday sales for a new business at Lifetime Fitness. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval of this item.
Approval of item number 3 has been moved. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. Item number 4, Rick's Cabaret, permanent expansion of premise. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rick's Cabaret at 303rd Street South also seeks a expansion of premises for a small sidewalk cafe and a rear patio off the alley. The sidewalk cafe will have 8 customer seats, and the back patio will have 26 seats. We did a public hearing notice mailing on this application. We sent 35 notices, and we notified all of the usual downtown neighborhood associations and business associations. That mailing was made on August 28th, and as of today, we have received no responses. This applicant will not provide any live entertainment outdoors, and the staff's recommendation is to approve.
Are there any questions for Mr. Wilson on item number 4? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll open the public hearing on item number 4, Rick's Cabaret, permanent cafe expansion of premise. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Frye.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval of this item.
Approval of item number 5 has been moved. Further comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. On to item number 5. This is the change authored by council members Frye, Bender, and Palmsamo with regard to 6040. Ms. Roberts, welcome.
Good afternoon, committee chair, Goodman, council members. I'm Linda Roberts, assistant manager of business licensing. I'm going to give a brief presentation on the amendments. The public record contains the specific details. I'm going to give a quick liquor 101 lesson. In 1920, alcohol was illegal. In 1933, alcohol was allowed to be sold in the liquor patrol limits, which is loosely downtown. And the assumption was that those establishments would be primarily bars, saloons, and nightclubs. In 1983, it was decided that if alcohol was going to be permitted outside of the liquor patrol limits, those locations needed to be on larger commercial corridors, 7 or more acres like Lake Street or Marshall, in order to serve liquor. And if the location were on smaller commercial corridors, like King's on 45th and Grand, they could only serve wine. All of those businesses needed to be restaurants, and the majority indicator of what those restaurants were their food to alcohol sales ratios. The need for these amendments is clear. The food to liquor ratios is no longer a relevant, useful tool to indicate if a business is operating as a restaurant. The cost of food and alcohol has changed since 30 years ago when the former city leaders developed the sole indicator of what a restaurant would be in order to serve alcohol outside of the liquor patrol limits. An example of how these regulations haven't worked is with a business that no longer operates in the city of Minneapolis, and that's Old Chicago and Uptown. They struggled to meet their food to liquor ratios the entire time they operated. The customers would come in and order a $20 pizza. They'd share it with 5 people, and perhaps each one of them would order an $8 beer, and they were out of compliance. This business didn't operate in a manner that negatively impacted the community, and they clearly were a restaurant. However, they failed to meet the minimum standards that were decided 30 years ago to define a restaurant. Working for over the past year with the industry, the community, the business associations, MPD, policymakers at the state and city level, we believe we have developed clearer and enforceable regulations. For example, the state legislature in 2014 added additional causes to revoke a liquor license under 348.450 and eliminated 6040 food requirements from the state statutes. Also, in 2013, the Minneapolis City Council approved an ordinance to allow for the imposition of conditions for liquor establishments. The amendments before you today are a continuation of the development of effective tools. The amendments before you today are in no means a reduction of requirements or a lessening of regulations. The amendments before you today accomplish 2 specific goals. 1, they eliminate the food to alcohol sales ratios from the code and replace them with clearer and more enforceable regulations on how restaurants that serve alcohol must operate. And 2, develop a complete set of reasonable regulations that will have a positive corrective impact on alcohol establishments that operate in a manner that negatively impact the communities regardless of where they're located. Staff envision using the tools in this manner. Let's say a business told the city and its residents that they're going to, during the application process, that they're going to operate as a high-end restaurant, but instead operated in a manner that negatively impacted the community around it with noisy and rowdy behavior. The new tools would allow us to cite that business for operating as outside of the approved application under the new section 362.270. Also, it allows us to easily document that they're not operating as a restaurant under the new section 360.10 and or operating as an excessive bar area under 362.395, and begin progressive enforcement that could include writing them citations or requiring them to reduce their bar area, reduce their hours of operation or their entertainment under 360/50 if they did not relieve the negative impact on their community. The timing of passing these amendments is important. Staff is recommending that council approve these amendments now so that we have comprehensive tools in place prior to the November ballot. Without successful passage of these amendments, the voting public could support eliminating the food to alcohol sales ratios from the charter, and we would be left with less effective tools in place to regulate those businesses. Public hearing notices were sent on August 26 to all alcohol establishments, to business associations and neighborhood associations. These amendments have been vetted multiple times at our business advisory group meetings, the liquor industry in the city meeting, otherwise known as LINK, and 2 other town hall meetings. We've received 5 responses in favor and 2 not in favor of the amendment. Staff is available for questions. We're recommending approval.
Are there any questions for Ms. Roberts? Okay, none at this point. Seeing none, what's going to happen is I'm going to open the public hearing on item number 5. I'm going to turn the chair over to Councilmember Fry. Unfortunately, I have an appointment at 3:15 that I cannot miss, and he will continue because we will have quorum. I want to note we've been joined by Councilmember Palansamo, who's one of the authors, and then just open the public hearing and then just call on the amazing, wonderful Commissioner Representative McElroy to speak first, who has had a tremendous, wonderful relationship with the city of Minneapolis, and invite you to speak on behalf of the industry to start.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McElroy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair. My name's Dan McElroy. I'm here on behalf of the Minnesota Restaurant Association, 305 Roselawn Avenue East, Maplewood. And my thanks to our council authors and to council staff. This has been an ongoing discussion and process over several years to come to a better method of determining the difference between a restaurant and a bar or a nightclub in ways that preserve both an exciting restaurant community that has now a growing national reputation as a great place to dine and to have a good time and to have a variety of restaurant choices, and do it in a way that we can have both great restaurants and strong neighborhoods. There are really only 3 points I want to make. We raised the issue that the old ratios of 60-40 and 70-30 didn't work, and that there had to be a better way. And I think the discussion has led to a better way, a set of definitions of what is a restaurant, that they have a menu baked from or made from scratch, that the menu is available a reasonable amount of the day, that there are cooking facilities, that diners are greeted with menus and the tables are set in such a way that it acts like a restaurant. We have restrictions in other places in the code about live entertainment and about community impacts. The changes in the ordinance make for someone described it as a loosening of the standards. No, I think it's a replacement of a contemporary standard with an older standard that didn't work. Second, I have more than 200 members in the community, some of whom are affected by this and many of whom are not. And their support for it is virtually universal because it's good for the restaurant reputation in the restaurant industry and for the city. So downtown restaurants that aren't impacted, restaurants whose menu style is such that they haven't had difficulty meeting 60-40. I haven't had a single member say we ought to oppose this because it's good for somebody else. The 60-40 change is also in a part of a process where the charter change to also allow a different standard of determining what is a restaurant in 70-30 neighborhoods is important. We think the approach taken to get the ordinance in place prior to the charter vote so that voters can be sure that this is a reasonable method of regulating restaurants is really a wise one. So on behalf of our members, there may be some other people here who don't entirely agree with us, but our members are supportive of all 3 ordinance changes. We thank the staff. We look forward to this being adopted and then to working as we get rules in place for the fine details. But this is an exciting day after a 2+ year effort to modernize the code, and we strongly thank the authors and encourage support. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can take questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. McElroy. I think we'll hold off on questions for right now. Next is David Buzud. I can't quite read the handwriting there. Oh, you had to leave. Molly Broder.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Council people, thank you for taking this up. I was hoping David Burley would be here to speak on behalf of the 6040 group. I also have a 6040 restaurant, Broder's Pasta Bar, but I also have 7030 restaurant, two of them, Broder's Cucina Italiana and Terzo Vino Bar in South Minneapolis. There's a little correction to the history in that there was a referendum vote in 95 that allowed, because there was no alcohol except a 3-2 beer license allowed in the smaller neighborhoods. And 20 years ago when we opened the Pasta Bar, we petitioned the state, anyway, triggered a referendum to allow wine and beer in the smaller neighborhoods. We are now facing a ballot issue because we can't change, even though this ordinance, which I fully support, I hope you will pass, will not change the situation for the 7030 restaurants. I just want to encourage you to act on this quickly because in the educational campaign that we have, it's a little confusing. Most customers or residents have no idea what 60/40, 70/30 means. So it's nice to get this taken care of and also to give us a place to land, you know, when we pass the ballot. Okay, and just one more note. It's a quality issue, not a quantity issue. I just want to say that. We offer really high quality food. People have a choice. I can't control the amount they spend on alcohol. So the same amount of alcohol, one bottle of wine, a customer can choose to buy a bottle of wine for $20, $30, $40, $50, $60, $70, $80 on infinitum. So there's no difference in the amount of alcohol consumed. So to put a dollar ratio just does not work, especially as customers demand more quality. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Broder. I'm not sure, did you give your address at the very beginning? If you would.
4841 Russell.
Thank you. Ben Gisselman, if you could state your name and address, please.
Thank you, Chair Fry, other council members and staff. My name is Ben Gisselman. I operate a business that's called ALE Training. ALE is an acronym for Alcohol Liability Education. We're located at 4501 31st Avenue South in Minneapolis. And just to explain a little bit, again, kind of my involvement in this discussion, again, the kind of training that my business provides is server training for bars and restaurants. And it pertains specifically to liquor liability in the service industry. Been doing this since 2002, and we've trained thousands of employees here in this community and many, many customers. By and large, the success of this industry certainly is a direct impact on the success of my business. And so most of the people, or all of the people really that we work with, and certainly those that would be impacted by this change, support the elimination of the 60/40 requirement. I became involved in this conversation just simply because we understood that as part of the elimination of the 60/40 requirement, there were going to be some additional regulations perhaps added into the city ordinance. I did have an opportunity, Chair Fry, as you know, and the authoring council members, Paul Masano and Glidden, to provide some preliminary information just about server training. I've had some conversations with Linda Roberts as far as fashioning the language of the code. And so I really signed up here today just to not only voice my support for this change, but also just to be here as a resource in case there was any discussion, maybe perhaps by further public comments about the server training requirement aspect of the ordinance change that's been proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Gisselman.
Thank you.
Mr. Pomplin, please state your name and address, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
Yes, my name is Robert Pomplin. I live in DuPont Avenue, 822 DuPont Avenue North in Minneapolis, and I've been training in the city for 30 years, council members, and thank you for the opportunity of speaking with you. I think the city is going in the right direction to help and assist and provide safety. I think the more you do with that, the less fear that occurs. I think as long as we look at working with the industry to achieve these goals, you'll get a lot more success, and the more input they have, the less risk that it comes from that. I think everything's going the way that it should in the aspect of having goals, but I think the goals have to be common and they have to all work together, and the more input everybody has to get this, the less risk that's going to occur from it. I just think that the forum should be open and the treatment should be equal to all people. And I want to thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Pomplin. Is there anybody else here that would like to talk about this, the ordinance changes? Anybody else? Anybody else? I will close the public hearing. And I believe Councilmember Palmisano would like to speak on this. She's done an extraordinary job really leading this effort, so thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention and reiterate some of the thoughts from Ms. Roberts that I'm very pleased with these ordinance proposals and the process that brought us here today. I particularly want to thank Grant Wilson and Linda Roberts, who began working on these changes last year. Thank you for your leadership here. This has been a truly cooperative effort with all the stakeholders, and of course, thanks to Councilmember Glidden and yourself, Chair Fry, for your efforts. I think this package represents the views of residents all over the city as well. I think this effort speaks to this cooperation. I think this package will result in improved business parameters for restaurants. I think it will result in a better experience for both the neighbors living near them and also the customers visiting them. So just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmisano. I will add that I think this is a really good step forward, and it's just basic common sense. You know, my typical dinner when I go out is, you know, you get a burger or a sandwich, a side salad, and 2 beers. The 2 beers are often fancier craft style beers, so they cost $6 a pop. Already you're up to $12. The sandwich and the side salad is usually about $12 also. You're already beyond the 60-40 rule, and you're at 50-50. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. Not to mention, I think this is an archaic law ordinance, and it's become counterproductive. You know, while the original intent, I'm sure, was to keep drunks from walking around town looking windows, the result is actually exactly the opposite now. What you have is, because we've got a limit on, we've got the 60-40 limit, what restaurants and bars are required to do is lower the quality of their alcohol. So they move away from the Grey Goose and they start serving the Aristocrat rail drinks. So rather than 11 or 12 bucks a pop, it's $3 or $4 a pop, and the 22-year-old is getting absolutely trashed on 3 or 4 of them, whereas they probably only afford 1 of them or 2 of them if it were Grey Goose. And that's the reality of what's happening right now. So I really applaud Councilmember Palmisano and Councilmember Glidden's efforts on this, and I'm happy to move approval of this item. Do we have any further comments? I move approval of this item. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Item carries. Next up, we got the quasi-judicial hearings, which we have, looks like 3 of them. The first is Ahmed's Certified Auto Care, which is at 615 45th Avenue North, and the staff
Mr.
recommendation is to deny.
Mr. Vice Chair, I believe item number 6 is still in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Fussy. You are right. Item number 6, which is the 2015 license fees, and is to approve 2015 license fee schedule with no increase from the current 2014 license fee and schedule. And there's items A and B. Do we have staff to discuss? Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dan Huff will be giving a presentation on this item. I would like to just give a preliminary report that the annual license fee review, in this case, a public hearing notice has to be sent out 30 days in advance. We did send that notice out on August 8th of this year. that was sent electronically to all licensed businesses, all business associations, all neighborhood associations, and this was placed on our website also on August 8th. From that notifications, we have received 7 responses back from that. The staff recommendation you will find from Mr. Huff's report is for no license fee increase this year. We did receive 7 responses, and all were in support of not increasing license fees for this year.
Thank you, Madam Wilson. Do we have anybody else that would like to talk about this?
Mr. Chair, my name is Dan Huff. I'm the Director of Environmental Health at the City of Minneapolis Health Department. I have a great presentation for you today, which you saw yesterday at Health, Energy, Community Engagement Committee, which I have now not been able to pull up on the computer.
Mr. Huff, we're going to have a quorum issue in a second here, so we're going to have to really hustle it along so we can get
we are proposing 0% increase, and we are proposing directing staff to incorporate a few things in looking at 2016. We want to basically overhaul our fee schedule, looking at a tiered rental license, looking at a risk-based food license fees, a sponsor fee for short-term events. We want to bring better equity between our facilities within a revised fee schedule. We want to clean up and simplify, and we want to round all of our fees to the nearest $5. This would be presented next year in the fall for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Any questions for staff? I move approval of this item. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay.
Excuse me, Chair Fry. The public hearing
Leave the public hearing for
open.
this. All right, I'd like to open the public hearing on this issue. Does anybody want to talk about this? Does anybody want to talk about this? Does anybody? No. Seeing that nobody wants to talk about this, I close the public hearing and move approval of this item. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. That item has been approved. On the quasi-judicial items, we have one item that is up, which is item number 8. Rental dwelling license at 3526 Lindale Avenue North. Mr. Fussy, are you going to talk about this today?
Mr. Vice Chair, I believe that Ms. Dowling.
Mrs. Dowling, go for it.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair, committee members. The property involved in this action is 3526 Lindale Avenue South. This is a residential single-family dwelling. Mr. Ng, who is the Chief Operator Officer of Minnesota Realty and Management LLC, obtained a license to operate the property as a rental business in November 2010. On January 10th, 2011, an inspection was conducted, which resulted in a written order and notice of an unlawful occupancy being issued, advising the owner to discontinue the use of the second floor rooms as bedrooms, due to low ceiling height. The compliance date established on the order was February 04, 2011. On January 25th, 2011, a notice of director's determination of non-compliance was sent to the owner. The notice informed the owner to bring the rooms back into the compliance by February 4th, 2011, and that any future violations involving illegal occupancy or over occupancy may result in City Council taking action to revoke the rental license. On May 6, 2014, an inspection was conducted, which resulted in a second written order and notice of an unlawful occupancy being issued, advising the owner again to discontinue the use of the second floor rooms as bedrooms due to the low ceiling height. The compliance date established on the order was June 14, 2014. The second incident of illegal occupancy is in violation of Licensing Standard 3 of Minneapolis Code 244.1910. On May 20th, 2014, a notice of revocation was sent to the owner in Minnesota Realty and Management via U.S. and certified mail. The notice was also posted on the rental dwelling, giving the owner 15 days to appeal. On June 2nd, 2014, an appeal of the revocation action was received. A hearing occurred on July 22nd, 2014, in front of Hearing Officer James Gurvage. The owner appeared at the hearing. Testimony and evidence were presented. The recommendation of the hearing officer was to revoke the rental license for the property. At this time, the city would like you to affirm the hearing officer's recommendation, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Dowling. Do we have any questions for staff? Seeing none, this is an introductory statement that we were reading prior to the quasi-judicial hearing, for which this committee is we are limited by law to hearing argument from the property owner or the owner's representative, but we're prohibited from considering any further evidence, taking any further testimony. This means that you are required to limit your comments to arguments specifically addressing the evidence or testimony introduced before the hearing officer, which is part of the record that is already before us. So again, we may not offer and you may not offer, we may not consider any new or additional evidence based solely on this existing record and the arguments that the parties make today. This City Council may affirm, modify, or reverse the recommendation that is before us. Is the owner or representative owner here today to speak? Yes, come forward and please state your name and your address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Eng, and with Minnesota Realty and Management LLC, and which is I'm the property owner at the my business address is 14136 White Rock Road, Burnsville. Today I'm here trying to clarify a few things here so that you are some of the details so that you can make best decision, for a survivor like me. And it's the best interest for, for your city as well. I'm trying to do the best effort that I have and in a good faith for this rental license that I had. The truth is, when I found out that the illegal occupancy of the upstairs rooms on my rental unit, I immediately went over to my rental property and removed those bed frame and take the mattress away. And I called Inspector Remsky, and then she came over twice to check on the property, and it was in compliance with that. So I'm a proactive person. I'm a responsible landlord in that per se. And also I had the tenant to sign a consent and acknowledgement form that it will be ground for termination of the lease. That when she found a violation on that, I do whatever I can in my power to do the remedy right after the violation was found. But somehow the city regulatory services people, they just use that twice violation as ground for the revocation of my rental license. And I have proposed to actually lock the up 2 rooms, and it was rejected by the one of the deputy director because she was saying that locking the room is providing a hazard, it's something that I can be done. And then if that wouldn't work,
Mr. Ang, I'm sorry to cut you off here, but
yeah.
The issue was illegal occupancy. Did you take measures to get rid of the illegal occupants?
What do you mean?
So there were people that were living in the building that you own.
Yeah.
And that them living there was against the law. I understand that you took out the bedding and you took out the sheets, but what efforts did you make to actually get them out of the building?
I actually tried to get them out. So that the problem is, the lady that renting from me, she's pregnant. And she's like, she had a baby there. And at the time, I told her that you move on. You try to look for a place. I'm not going to rent to you anymore. And she said yes, she will try to look for a place. But the thing is, at the weekend, at that same week that she was like, she was like, due for delivery. But she was late for delivery for a week or so. And I tried to get her out. And then later on, she got a baby. So, and then she doesn't have a job. Yeah. There's no way that she can move. And the thing is that, when she's pregnant and when she delivery, there's no job for her. And she's like,
No, I understand. Do you have anything further to add that anything to clarify from the previous testimony you gave at the appeal?
In terms of what?
Is there any testimony that you gave at the appeal that you would like to perhaps clarify or make clear?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to clarify here is I'm doing whatever I can to be able to legally I would the thing is right on the time that when you have to look at the whole picture on that is it's a tenant that actually called the city to go against me because of she was 1 month late on her rent, and in order for her to stay is to call the city. Here's a list of violation. The city wrote me 18 items of violation that I have to fix, plus this illegal occupancy of she has a bed upstairs. So I took the bed out. I told her you cannot stay up there, and then I have a how you call that
So I've heard all this, and that's all in the record already.
Yeah, it's all in the record there. And
so I'm going to have to cut you off here unless you have anything specific further to add. We've seen all that in the record at this point.
Yeah.
And I'd like actually to call Ms. Dowling up. I have a few questions for her.
Yeah, I just because when I proposed something that to a council at the hearing at the time, and then they will not, I have a lot of things that I can try, like for example, I can actually seal up the place.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. No, I understand. You've said that a few times. And I hear you and understand.
Yeah. I can convert the room to become like a storage room, a smaller, so that nobody can put a bed up there. I can do whatever I can, to be able to, it's part of the thing that I wrote in here,
Thank you.
But the thing is, the city,
Mr. Yang, I got to cut you off. I'm sorry. We got to move forward with this item here. Ms. Dowling, real quick. So obviously the infractions were illegal occupancy, and there were two of them.
Correct, Mr. Vice Chair, committee members. There was 2 incidents of over-occupancy for the 2 second-floor bedrooms. They did not meet the ceiling height requirements per the ordinance.
Okay, and are there also payments that are in default as well?
That information I actually do not have in front of me. I apologize. I can get that to you though. The city just moved forward because of the 2 over-occupancy issues.
Okay, and just to what, Mr. Fussy, how does the pregnancy issues come into play here legally? And I'm sure that was also presented on the appeal.
Well, Mr. Vice Chair, I would say that I don't think the issue of the relationship between the tenant and the landlord is what is an element of this action. The elements of this action, which I think are indisputed, are that the 2 incidents of illegal occupancy took place, and if that's the case, revocation is authorized under the ordinance. Certainly under the ordinance, you're also able to reject or modify that recommendation. But I think the facts here are indisputed that the legal basis does exist to support the revocation recommendation. And I would remind the committee that certainly there is an ability to reapply or to reinstate a license after revocation. And certainly at that time, measures could be put as conditions on the license going forward that might look at preventing these types of incidences from occurring once again. But the legal framework that the city has adopted establishes that if 2 incidents of illegal occupancy occur, that revocation is authorized. And I think that's been met here. That being said, as the committee, you are authorized to affirm, modify, or reject that conclusion that was reached by the hearing officer. Thank you.
Ms. Dowling, do we know if anybody's presently living there?
At this, excuse me, Mr. Vice Chair, committee members, at this time, I believe it is still occupied. However, I would have to get back to you on that information.
Do we have any further comments by anyone else on the committee?
Based on the facts before us, I move to affirm the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Councilmember Reich. He has moved to affirm the staff recommendation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. That item has been approved. Thank you. We have 2 items that are remaining on the agenda for today. It's items number 15 and 16. The first is home improvement programs lending services. Is staff prepared to give us the rundown?
Mr. Vice Chair, it's Mark Anderson, and I'm here to address the home improvement programs. The city in the past has historically provided home improvement financing, but due to budget constraints, there was a couple years where no financing was offered. Thankfully, in the 2014 CPED budget, they included $810,000 for the senior housing initiative and then $305,000 for other owner-occupied housing, and these are for home improvement programs. And there's three essential programs that go with that. One is the code abatement program, which is for households at or below 50% of median income, and that offers up to $20,000 as a 0% deferred loan. They pay it back after 30 years or when they no longer own the property. And with the second program, that is the home repair loan. That is a 1% amortizing type loan. And in that is for households at or below 80% of the median income. And that is, like, as I indicated, is an amortizing loan that goes up to possibly 20 years. It's typically about 1 year for every $1,000 that they receive. Those are for code improvements to the home only. It isn't for other types of improvements. We do have other programs that we've offered that go for other types of improvements as well. But the concept here is that we want to keep people in their housing, and particularly seniors in their housing, because that to them is affordable housing.
Mr. Vice
so if we
Chair,
can keep the home repaired.
I have just noticed that we do not have a quorum, and this committee is unable to take any action except to recess or adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Fussy. Seeing that we do not have quorum, I'm assuming, Mr. Fussy, that we can take these matters up during the full council meeting the following Friday, without recommendation from committee.
Yes, I believe that they would be forwarded. Is that not the case? We might have to schedule a special.
If items 15 and 16 require action this cycle, I think the route would be to adjourn this meeting to a time perhaps in front of committee of the whole to take up an action.
That makes sense. Let's, if we could move forward towards scheduling a brief meeting. Actually, there'll be two before the committee of the whole. There'll be the Elections and Rules Committee, if we could schedule one just prior to the Elections and Rules Committee to take these final two matters up. That would be great. And I apologize for cutting you off midway there. Being that we do not have a quorum, this meeting is adjourned.